Okay, Vicky, take it away.
Okay. Hey, everybody. I'm Viqui Dill. I am she, her. And today we're going to talk about how to be a better ally. I guess I should have called my presentation Better Ally because I think it's a process. I'm not sure that we'll ever make it to good, but we want to get better. And the name of the presentation is Show Up, Speak Up, Shut Up. And that's basically the process of being a better ally. Show up, and then you speak up a little bit, and then you shut up and back up and let the person in the underserved group take the microphone. Before I start, I want to point out that just in case you want to do some social media, there are a ton of hashtags that you can use for this. I am at Viqui Dill in Twitter and Instagram, and I think most of the online sources. But we've got a TechCom hashtag, we've got a diversity hashtag, equity, inclusion. We'll talk about all of those. And the one that may be new to you is this ally, A11Y. And that apparently in the diverse world means ally or friend of the community. So today I want you to walk away from this presentation remembering three things. I want you to be able to understand your own privilege. Then the easiest question, I think, who can be an ally? So hopefully everybody will say me. And then we'll talk a little bit about what allyship looks like. I know some of the people that are attending today have seen this presentation. So every time that I present this information, it goes a little bit of a different direction. So everybody has microphone rights. I do want it to be more of a discussion than a lecture. This allyship is tough, I think, for all of us. I think everybody's been othered in some way, and everybody's been in the team that may be inadvertently othering others. So I want to make sure that we have a chance to talk about that. So this slide is called #MeToo, and I just want everybody to understand that I also have been othered. Back in 1978, I was the first woman engineer at a chemical plant in New Jersey. It was a very blue-collar kind of organization, and it was really tough to be the first woman engineer there. And I will send you a link to this. I know you can't click the link from your Zoom screen, but I'll send you a link to this in my presentation notes. You can see this graphic on the right, the Snap-on Tools calendar with the scantily clad woman. This kind of thing was in every lab. In the chemical plant, every machine shop in the chemical plant. And I'm supposed to be acting like a professional, knowing that there's a almost naked woman hanging on the wall. It was really tricky. So I have been on the other, I have also been othering others. So I speak from experience. Today, we're going to talk about a few things. We're going to talk about the models of diversity. And this presentation was developed by the University of Virginia, specifically talking to the members of the autism community on the autism spectrum. But a lot of the things that they presented, a lot of the tips that we can learn today can be applied to pretty much any group that is other. You know, it can be people on the spectrum, it can be people of different heritage, it can be people of different race, it can be single moms, it can be small business owners. It can be people with mental health challenges. I think all of the ways that we can be a better ally to one group can also be applied to being a better ally to others. And I did include a couple of graphics. One of them is the difference between diversity and inclusion. You can see in the diversity graphic, we have lots of puzzle pieces and they're all different colored. They're different colors. So we have lots of different groups represented in diversity, but they're not necessarily working together. And so inclusion is when we have lots of different groups and everybody's got a place in the whole. You know, I've heard diversity talked about being invited to the party, and then inclusion being asked to dance. So we want to make sure that not only do we have a diverse community, but that everybody's included and they feel like they belong and they're part of the whole. The other concept that we wanted to talk about was equity, right? In the little graphic with the people trying to see over the fence so they can see the baseball game, we got equality where everybody gets a little hand up, but really only 2 out of the 3 of our people can see over the fence. So if we do equity, the people that need extra help get extra help. This little guy in the purple shirt, he can see over the fence. And then the guy in the red shirt gets a little less help than Mr. Guy in the purple shirt, but everybody can see over the fence. And then I have heard also this same graphic, although I couldn't find it, a third option, which is justice, where we just take the fence down and everybody can see without having to be helped. Anyway, so those are the concepts that we want to understand. We're going to talk about models of diversity. And the first one, this was developed by the UVA presentation that I did see. And they talk about a biological model. It's easier to apply a biological model to the autism spectrum than it is other kinds. But basically, a biological model is where my diversity lives in my body. I'm the woman living, working at the chemical plant. I am a woman. When we talk about the autism spectrum, people who hold to the biological model want to cure autism. And if you know anything about me, you know that I have a son on the spectrum and he thinks he's fine as he is. He doesn't need to be cured. And so that's kind of discriminating to them to say, I need you to change. You may have people who are from a different socioeconomic group. And so even though they may be well educated or they may have done a lot of self-educating, they don't necessarily speak that way, but we don't want to necessarily change them for that, right? We want to appreciate that difference. A lot of women are told to be less emotional at work and in a professional environment. But I think that our emotions, our emotional intelligence is really something that we bring to the party. That's something that it enhances an organization rather than taking away from it. So that's the biological model. This is my body. I'm a woman. I'm more emotional, whatever. But then so that's one model. But what the UVA presentation said we really want to do is develop a more social model. Find out, how is society exclusive? How are we putting these people as other? Can't we make room for them? Curb cuts in the sidewalk help not only people that are in wheelchairs, but they also help a lot of other things. They help moms with strollers. They help those of us with rolling backpacks. A way that we can make things more inclusive to one group can also help other groups. So we want to look for that. How are we being exclusive and how can we tear down those barriers, tear that fence down? And so the other 2 bullets that are on here say, how can we increase services and accommodations, which we talked about a second ago? And how can we reduce our own oppression by letting go of questionable norms? For the example of people on the autism spectrum, we've got people that have a hard time making eye contact. Now, I know when I'm talking to my son, if he's making eye contact to me, he's doing it to please me, not to interact with me. That's just a social norm that me not being on the spectrum or being somewhere else on the spectrum. I like to have eye contact. It makes me feel like somebody's paying attention to me. But when I'm talking to my son, if he's making eye contact to me, he's thinking, I'm making eye contact. I wonder what she's saying. So it's something that is just in our system. We expect people to meet our norms. And we want to look for those ways that we're doing that and try to get rid of them, try to make room for different kinds of norms. And then the last thing on the models of diversity, we want to accept people's differences. We want to be able to have a neurodiverse organization for STC. We want to have a heritage diverse organization for STC. We want to have lots of perspectives. And we want to have appreciation rather than a color blindness, because we see each other. We see our differences. We want to welcome them and not pretend that we're ignoring them. So you guys, I just want to remind you that you do have microphone rights if you want to jump in. jump in. So we want to understand our own privilege. Now, a definition of our own privilege is a kind of a discrimination or a negative bias against individuals with differences. And these kinds of biases can be obvious to us. They can be systemic. We have biases in our healthcare system and in our employment system. We've all seen those studies where people submit resumes, and people that have sort of American sounding names, their resumes are more likely to be chosen for interviews. And if that is in our system, we want to try to eliminate that. We want to try to make employment equitable for across all groups. I did present this information. I presented it at Conduit in Philadelphia and also at Spectrum in Rochester. And one of the attendees is on her town council, and they were trying to figure out, why do certain groups not want to participate in the coronavirus vaccination program? And they thought it was because of the Tuskegee experiment, or they thought it was some other kinds of resistance within the community. Well, it turned out these people just needed a ride. That was their only problem. That was the only resistance to getting their vaccination. And so what they did, instead of forcing everyone to get a ride to them, they sent mobile vaccination units into the neighborhoods. So that kind of discrimination can be systemic, come to our place and get your vaccination. Or we could look at it the other way around and send the vaccinations to people. So discrimination can also be person to person. You guys have all seen it. You've probably been a victim of it. People just having a lack of empathy. I want you to meet my norms. An interesting bullet that they had in the UVA presentation was that the one way that we can subtly discriminate against people in other groups, especially people that are differently abled, is we sort of erase them as an adult. We erase their sexuality. We take a childlike view of them. And if we're doing that, we want to stop. We want to make sure that we see them as adults when we can. Another way, which surprised me, that they pointed out, you can be seen as an inspiration, which is kind of like saying, for a larger sized woman, they're making lots of good fashions. It's a sort of a left-handed compliment when you see someone as an inspiration. We want to make sure that we see them as an inspiration because of their character, maybe their accomplishments, and not because, oh boy, little you, haven't you done this challenging thing, right? And the big thing I think it's going to be throughout this presentation, that self-awareness is really hard. It's hard to see bias. It's hard to see privilege in yourself. And so we need each other. We need to be accountable to each other. We need to get feedback from each other. All right. Who can be an ally? Everybody, raise your hand. So any of us can, right? Anyone with a privilege on a particular axis, we make a choice to be an ally, to reach out. And so we're going to talk about what allyship looks like with the time that we have left. We want to make sure that it's personal. We want to make sure that it's active. It's not just my attitudes, but it's also the things that I do that's actionable. It's not performative. I'm not doing this because I want people to think, oh, look, Vicky, she's so kind to the people on the autism spectrum. I don't want that at all. I want to make sure that it's because I actually care and that it's helping them rather than helping me. And sometimes you have to check in about the intent when you're doing an overt action to support a group. Sometimes you have to do some kinds of research. For example, with the autism spectrum community, there's a group called Autism Speaks. And adults on the spectrum do not like this group because they're in the camp that says we want to cure autism rather than make room for autism, rather than appreciate our neurodiverse populations. For some reason, this group, Autism Speaks, is mostly about parents trying to get the autistic characteristics out of their kids rather than try to make room in society for them. So you got to do your research and make sure that you are supporting groups and taking action. That's actually something that will help. And again, self-awareness, really, really hard. So, well, let's talk about the 8 things that we can do to be a better ally. We're going to talk, the slide just talks about all 8 of them, and they're going to be titled on the following slides. So the first thing that we can do is we can educate ourselves. We can look for content that is created by community members, right? We don't really want content that Viqui Dill has done about another group. I can talk about my own experience being the first woman engineer. I can talk about my experience of being the mom of somebody on the autism spectrum, but we need to be listening for content created by those community members. And also, big important point, before I go to a diverse person with a question, such as what can I do to help, or tell me a little more about the history, I need to do my homework. I need to do my own intellectual and emotional work. I should not have to ask them to start from the beginning and explain things to me. I need to do that work myself. And that way, once I have done the work, I can listen for their stories. I already know, for example, the history of the 13th Amendment because I watched the movie 13, because I sought out books about white privilege, because I've sought out things written by people on the spectrum. And that way, it's not their job to educate me. It's my job to educate me. And then I'll be a better listening ear. Oh, learn about privileged language, you guys. As writers, this is really a big deal, I think, for us. I will tell you a story about my church wanted to make t-shirts because we have a population of women in our church that are very outspoken. And that kind of thing is not well received in a lot of churches. And so as we visited other churches, we were hearing people talking about uppity women, meaning women within the church that were outspoken should perhaps not have been. So we were very proud of our outspokenness and our self-assertion. So we were going to make these t-shirts that said uppity women of the exchange. Well, it turns out that is a racist term. We did not know that. That's not our word to use. And so we had to go to a thesaurus and find some synonyms. And so our shirts now say rebelliously self-assured women of the exchange. I was looking through some publications that I found online about diverse language in our own technical writing. And I have found that some of the technical writing that we do for the Coast Guard actually has racist terms or terms that show privilege. For example, Scrum Master. Scrum Master is sort of a universal job. It's a job that is well understood, but it contains that word master, and that word can show our privilege against certain groups. Whitelisting. Apparently the National Institute of Science and Technology, they've got a list of controls for better cybersecurity and information security, and they use the word whitelist. Really, that term can be interpreted as racist or showing privilege. And a lot of our technical documentation about software talks about certain functions are native, and that is also a word that we may not have that may not be our word to use. So we want to look at our technical writing and try to find terms that we can substitute for that. Instead of saying Scrum, we could say Scrum leader, or we could say onboard functionality, or we could say approved list or denied list instead of whitelist and blacklist. So as we're educating ourselves, we also want to partner with local or international advocacy organizations. And we want to make sure, as I talked about with that Autism Speaks organization, we want to make sure that the organizations that we choose to help out actually align with community. So we don't want to make things worse when our intent is to make things better. I'm going to peek at the chat. Oh, nice. Everybody's got no. Anyway, we'll talk about the chat in a few minutes. We want the let's make sure that I'm still able to advance my slides. There we go. So once I've educated myself, I want to pass things along, and not pass things along as though they're a lecture. I want to share with my family and friends. I want to share with my coworkers once I know that we're using these privileged terms at work. I want to share with my other coworkers. And in public venues, my church, the Exchange, we're a member of the Mennonite Council. We're in a Mennonite church, and the official policy of the Virginia Mennonite Council is that if my pastor performs same-sex marriage, he will lose his license. And we want to make sure that we're having those conversations with them. Now, we could just drop out, but I think it's important that we stay in the organization and have those conversations. And if you find something good on the web that, like the example that I gave was the movie 13, share that on social media so that people in your group, your friends and family who are also trying to be better allies, will have some resources that they can do to help educate themselves. And we want to make real changes. We talked about privileged language in our technical writing, so maybe we want to update our style guides. At my church, I am the worship leader, and I have tried very hard to knock out the gender specific pronouns in the songs that we sing. So we're trying to clean up, our song lyrics. We're trying to clean up our technical manuals. We just want to make sure that we have an awareness now, right? We've educated ourselves, we're aware, and we share what we know. So the third thing that we can all do is we can look for opportunities where you can create a space for diverse people to directly express their thoughts. So we use our own privilege to get an audience. And then we need to ask ourselves, where can I step back so that the voices can be heard? I was really active at my other job in the Black History Month celebrations, Hispanic Heritage Month celebrations, Gay Pride celebrations. And I wanted to make sure that it wasn't the Viqui show. I wanted to make sure that whatever role I choose is in the background. So I did things like making their SharePoint site. I did menial shopping. I bought tablecloths for when we had fancy dinner, that kind of thing. Be a part of it, but make sure that the voices of the community are out front. As I said, I want to be wary of positioning myself as a leader of the conversation. I can be a leader of the conversation of women in engineering or women in tech com, but for other groups that I don't belong to, I want to be an advocate. I want to be an ally. The interesting thing in the UVA presentation was that they said we should be asking for more representation in mainstream media, not only in news, but also in arts. And we want to make sure that when diverse people have input, that they're given credit for that. And if that means paying them, then For crying out loud, we wouldn't pay them. So we amplify, we use our own privilege. This bullet number 4 says support the livelihood of diverse people. And that means we use our money to choose carefully who we buy from. These are a couple of websites that I go to that are little mom and pop shops in the Winchester area. It's easy for me to take my money to Amazon, or I could try to buy locally from a small business owner, especially one in an underserved community. We want to make sure that we compensate people for their work, especially their intellectual work. We want to hire diverse people. Remember, we talked about the resume study. We want to make sure that if we are discriminating based on somebody's first name, last name, that we design the system to get out of that. And this is a website. If we had more time, I would show you some toys. Since this is a presentation that was originally for people on the autism spectrum, there's this really great website that makes these cool stimulation type toys. So, and we're remembering that a diverse person is an individual, right? We don't want to treat them like they're children. When someone with a sort of a invisible difference is ready to disclose to you, that is really, really scary. Someone on the autism spectrum that is willing to disclose to you as a friend or as a coworker that they're on the spectrum, that takes a lot of guts. That also applies to people that have mental health challenges for some reason. We're fine to say I broke my arm, but if we say I'm schizophrenic for some reason, that is seen as shameful. It's okay to have an ear infection, but it's not okay to just, you can tell your coworkers I've got an ear infection, that's why I'm not at work today. But for some reason you can't say, you know, I'm battling with depression today. So we want to make sure that we try to get that out of our systems because it shows so much vulnerability to share your diagnosis. And we want to make sure when people gather up their courage to make that kind of disclosure that we treat them with respect. We're going to remember that everybody's different. And once they disclose to us, we want to say, what can I do to help increase your comfort? Don't want them disclosing and then we just kind of walk away saying, oh, that's interesting. I'm reading the chat. You guys are so great. I hope we have time to go through some of the chat stuff because I miss hearing your voices though. So if you want to get my attention, say, hey, Viqui. So we want to make sure that we support the diverse people that we know. I use my privilege to get attention. And then as soon as people are listening, I pass the mic, right? I may make the SharePoint site for the Black History Month signups. And as soon as people are signing up, pass it on to somebody within the community to make sure that their voices are getting heard and not mine. Oh, I wanted to, you guys notice here on Zoom, I have added my pronouns to my profile. A couple of others, I know Jamie has added her pronouns to her profile. It is an easy thing that we can do. And one of the reasons that we want to do that is because of that disclosure thing, right? If the rest of us who are perfectly secure and everybody knowing, like I'm perfectly secure if you know I'm a she, her, right? But I have friends that may have pronouns that it's a little bit scary for them to disclose what pronouns they want to be called. And I want to make sure that when they do, that the rest of us had made it just a really common thing. You know, I'm Viqui, she, her, Jamie's she, her. But when we have a friend that wants to be a they, or somebody that we used to say she decides wants to be a different pronoun, we want to make sure that's safe for them. And we can do that by disclosing our own, and then it's not such a big thing. Another thing that we can do to help diverse people, Ed Marsh was talking about being a TechCom mentor, that he specifically had some people in underserved communities, and he was put in touch with them, and he said, hey, you want a mentor? I can help you. I can work with you, get you into the network so that you can get a better job in TechCom. So consider that as you're running around and networking with people. There may be somebody that sort of doesn't know a whole lot of people in TechCom because they don't have a lot of TechCom people in their community. So, and you can be a mentor to them. And then you can learn a lot from them too. So once we've done that, let's celebrate. We want to be wary of framing diversity through a negative lens. We don't want to be saying, oh, you're such an inspiration. That a lot of people do that to Temple Grandin. Temple Grandin is a autistic woman who has a PhD, for crying out loud, and she's designed all of these systems in the agricultural business. And sometimes I see articles on her and it's all like, oh, it's such an inspiration. No, the woman's got a PhD. She's a genius. Let's celebrate her as that and not look down on her and see her as an inspiration because she's in that community. But she's an inspiration and she's also in that community. Another thing that we can do is to be sincere, is that we compliment people's behavior and their accomplishment, not their appearance. It is so hard for us, I think, sometimes to give a sincere compliment based on behavior and accomplishments. We want to say, oh, your earrings are cute. Well, that may be, there may be people of different economic status that can't afford cute earrings, right? We want to make sure we say, oh, I love what you said in that meeting, or I love this paper that you wrote, or I love the feedback that you gave me. Something like that. So make sure that we're complimenting actual person type traits and not sort of their physical or some other kind of way that we can sort of have this backhanded, left-handed compliment. Left-handed is probably not what I should have said. Compliment that's not necessarily directly about them. And then the last thing, I'm checking time. Oh, we do have time for questions. This is great. We want to hold ourselves accountable. Being self-aware is so hard. We know we're going to blow it as we try to help other. Oops, let me go backward. As we try to be a good ally, I think we're going to overfunction. We're going to underfunction. So we need to be there for each other. There needs to be lots of grace, lots of tolerance. We need to not be defensive when we make a mistake. We need to accept feedback. So you guys promise me that you'll hold me accountable. I probably made a dozen mistakes just in this presentation alone. So help me learn, because once I know better, I can do better. Same for all of us. Because allyship is a growing process. All right. So these are just links to the resources that I used for this presentation. And they'll be in my slides, which I'll share. And I want to point out that we do have a diversity, equity, inclusion, STC advisory panel, and I'm on that. There's also a DEI channel in Slack. If you haven't joined our Slack community, make sure that you do, and you can be part of the discussion in Slack about diversity, because I'm sure everybody in this room has been othered by somebody. You've been on the outside at one time, and we want to hear from you about that. And then we want to hear about ways that you're successful at making your community, your STC community, either your special interest group or whatever. We want to make sure that if you're having successes, you can share them with the rest of us. And we don't have time to watch this video, but I want you to, if you have time after the conference is over, inclusion starts with I. It talks about so many ways that we other each other. There's a single man talking about how he feels uncomfortable because the rest of his coworkers expect him to put in more hours because he doesn't have kids. Well, that's othering him, right? So everybody can be put on the outside. And we want to make sure that in STC at least, and in our own personal lives, that we make room for each other. So our takeaways, 3 things. Hopefully today we understand our privilege. I'm going to open the chat. You guys understand your privilege a little better, yes or no?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you. Good. I love to hear voices too. Excuse me. And the easy question, who can be an ally? You guys? Anyone? Anyway, everyone, yes.
Well, anyone and everyone, really.
That is so true. We can be an ally, whether we choose to is up to us, and hopefully we're all choosing to. And that's why you're here anyway, right? Because you could be somewhere having a fancy lunch, but we're here and we're having this talk. Thank you guys. And now we have a little better idea of what allyship looks like. I'm sure that you guys have other ideas that you can share. So that brings up, let me see if I can advance this. There we go. That's me. And the group in the back is the local high school choir that came to our Black History Month celebration. I was the one who did all the emailing back and forth and made a parking space for their school bus, right? That's how I was an ally to that community. You know, I didn't want to be out front, although I did want the selfie. I wanted the selfie real bad, but wanted to make sure that the voices were heard and it wasn't my voice. So here's where you park the school bus. Now come in and be the voice. And this is how you contact me. So I know you've got ideas about how to be a better ally, and I do want you to share them with me. So link with, you can email me, viqui.dill@gmail. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. With a name like Viqui spelled like this, I'm very Googleable, so be sure to reach out. And then I do have that WordPress site that you can read about my experience in 1978, being the only woman. So let's see, can I stop sharing?
Hey, Vicky.
All right, Liz.
I'll talk. So I'm on the panel with Vicky, and we are going to test pilot something for Summit and for anybody who wants to take advantage of it. If you have slides or a presentation you're doing, you want other eyes to look at it, you can post a link to your slides or post them in the Slack channel, the DEIP Slack channel, and people will give you some feedback. I mean, I always need extra set eyes looking at my stuff, you know, because it helps. So we're going to trial that out for Summit, and maybe we'll just let that be an ongoing program, and anyone can contribute. It doesn't have to be panel members. That's part of the whole point of posting it in a space, because we know everybody wants to be good, better at it.
That's great. Thanks, Liz.
Because I'm the one, you know, who will be just blindly of course, that is not appropriate, who will be accidentally saying things like Scrum Master, right? Instead of Scrum Leader. So, and I just did it. Oh, you guys. So help us out.
Great.
I wanted to know if anyone had the experience of being denied membership. So recently during COVID, I became plus size, and I tell some people about it online, you know, like I went to the plus size store, and I've had people deny that. They've never seen me in person. This is totally online. They say, you're not plus size, you're not obese. first of all, obesity does have a medical definition, which I meet. It's not like me saying I'm ugly, then you can lie with me, you can argue with me there because, that's very subjective. But also being plus size, you wear certain sizes in the store and it's not really that subjective. So, and I think they thought they were making me feel better, but it was invalidating my entire experience. And also the fact that they thought me being thinner would make me feel better was very invalidating as well. I mean, I almost said to the guy who said that, you've told me you're Black. Would you like me to say, no, you're not? Like, I don't know. And I'm totally denying who someone is. So.
And Laura, that is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Because, and like, why do I care? If you are what you say you are, right? One of the examples that I was giving at the time when I was the only woman engineer at the chemical plant, one of the things that used to drive me crazy was that we had a larger admin staff. Remember when somebody used to type for you and you didn't do it for yourself? So we had a larger admin staff and they were all in the same room, and universally everyone referred to them as the girls. And I had a lot of trouble with that. So I would ask people, don't refer to me as a girl and don't refer to these women as girls in my presence. And they would bend over backwards talking about how, oh no, that's a compliment. So it's both sexist and ageist, right? Just call these women, these fully functional adults, girls. Anybody else have those experiences?
I hate the term
Yeah,
girl.
I hate that term. I hate that term, girls.
42 years old. I am not a girl. I am a woman. Because how often do we refer to men as boys? Yeah, I mean,
The
It's not in the
issue is we
workplace.
do use guys to refer to men, and maybe there's not an equivalent female term, actually.
to me, I think that girl for a grown woman is incredibly condescending.
Yeah.
I am not 5 years old. I am 42. I have a job, a college degree, a house. I am not a girl.
And it's
Can I
sad
have
when
something
other
on the,
women call themselves girls. Like I have
Yeah,
a
they
coworker
do.
that says, oh, the girl in accounting. It's like, oh.
I have something, I guess, on like a different. I had to supervise an intern, and he was. I wasn't particularly a fan of just, he was not the best, and he was a little rude, but whatever, right? I was still professional and stuff. And then I found out that he was much, much older than me. I was probably 24, and he apparently was like 29. I didn't know that. And I remember sometimes I would refer to him as like, because as an intern, right, I'd be like, oh, this kid, right? Because that's what they usually, they're 18,
Yeah.
19.
Right.
And then now I remember, and I was just like, I would still refer to him as that. I don't know if that was just like because of how I initially met him, but I always have to be like, no, wait, I need to remind myself this was actually a man.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like the opposite, I guess, of that, of just being like, oh, this, I feel like sometimes it's used to kind of put a cushion, I guess, in terms of oh, like, oh, they're just a kid. It's like, no, like they're full grown, we should acknowledge that.
But
So
at least you realize that. Like I've had the experience too, when I point out to somebody that I am not a girl, don't refer to me as that, and they're like, they react negatively, like, why are you getting upset about this? That's just how I refer to women. Well, I didn't mean any offense by it. Well, then don't do it. Stop doing it. If you so at least you had that moment of self-awareness of saying, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. So that's a
So
good.
this is Yvonne. So my biggest thing is I consider myself an ally, but sometimes people will call me on things, and rightly so. And I have to be humble and go, you know what, you're right. And so that's very hard sometimes because in my mind, I am an ally. Don't you know that I'm an ally? And then when they call me on things and I go, oh, yep, totally got me. I don't want to say you got me. I don't want to do it. I just have to accept it. Like when someone gives me a compliment, I don't take compliments well. When someone corrects me in regards to a DEI, I need to accept that and be, respectful of and then move on without, trying to defend myself. So that's the biggest issue I have as what I considered an ally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've had that issue too, sometimes using words like in the LGBT community that they don't really like used. And then I have to say, okay, try and watch that, don't use it. But it's also funny because I am a member of the community, but a lot of times people think I'm not. So they think I'm an ally and I'm speaking as an ally. So yeah, there's several things about me that are kind of hidden that I'm a minority in. And yeah, people don't always know.
It's interesting too that sometimes use of the term girl is just, it really reveals people's estimation of, you know, someone's worth. We had a really strange situation years ago at work where someone made a reference to a member of our UX team who had contributed some graphics for some of the material that I shared, that I was responsible for on the team. And, you know, this person did not report to me. We were colleagues. We were, you know, same level in the organization, and it was a woman who referred to her as Bobby's girl. And I thought, what in the world? I mean, where does that come from? Apart from, not fully appreciating the talent and the skill and the expertise of someone who does that kind of work. You know, they don't just draw pictures or they don't just make things pretty, but it was stunning to me.
Yeah.
I'm reading in the chat, Sinitra, I love your point about all of this is part of becoming culturally competent. You know, it is a competence. And just like any other competence, you guys, we're going to start off not knowing stuff, right? We're going to be making mistakes. We're going to have to learn from others. We're going to have to accept feedback. Like you were saying, Yvonne, I am not a person who takes criticism or compliments that well, but I'm getting better. I want you guys hold me accountable.
Thank you, Vicky, for your comments, because I had to develop a culturally competent training for our writing consultants at the University of Houston downtown. And what I learned becoming culturally competent is that it's not something that happens overnight, it's a process. But the point is we have to accept the fact that we're all prejudiced, manage our prejudices, whether it's if it's for someone who is overweight or their skin tone or their ethnicity or their language or whatever, or their gender or their sexual orientation. First of all, accept that you are, just accept that, but manage it. And don't be colorblind, be color brave. I don't care if you see my skin tone. Okay, fine, accept it. I can't change it. And if I could, why should I? Am I asking you to change yours?
Right.
Then why should I change mine? Why can't we just accept the fact that we're human beings and we happen to just be born in a different lineage, and we happen to get a certain skin tone that comes through your lineage, whatever you are. So this culturally competent thing is a process, but the point is you have to commit to it and say, just like what you're saying, becoming an ally. And when Yvonne says, yeah, I'm an ally, but still an ally can make a mistake. Just like I'm trying to become more culturally competent. Yeah, it does mean we do make mistakes, but accept the correction with humility and say, you know what, I'm going to pay attention to that. So thank you so much, Vicky, for bringing this up, because this is really moving. And I have been taking steps to be careful in the language I use in just my writing overall.
Beautiful.
Vicky, I just want to thank you for this presentation, because I've been taking notes. And one of the things that's extremely challenging, I think, for all of us is to figure out the best way to show, be aware of people whose diversity or their differences or whatever is not really apparent, because you have people that you work with or that you see, on the street or on the bus or the train who are children of trauma. They might be homeless, and they bring all of that burden with them wherever they go. And there are a lot of homeless people who are working now, And here in California, that is a huge problem. There are so many homeless people here. And how does a homeless working person go to work and keep their dignity when they have to go back to a van or back to the street after they get off of work? So there are a lot of people that are dealing with many assaults to their trauma or to their dignity every single day. And how do they communicate that? So, I think for me, one of the big challenges and one of the blessings that I have as a person who grew up with trauma is that I don't want to assume that everybody has a great life just because they have a good position as a technical writer. There may be a whole war going on in their lives. And, I just, it's important to understand that people have had their dignity assaulted so many times. And how do I avoid adding to that burden?
Right.
In my language, in my communication.
Well, and Talia says sometimes people will get fired if their employers find out that they're homeless. I actually, full disclosure, I was homeless for a week last week, and just the simple things. So I took vacation because I'm privileged that way. I could take vacation and get my ducks in a row, and I'm not homeless anymore. But just simple things like keeping my phone charged was really just really hard. Simple things like that. So one day I'll tell you the story. I'll write a book. So thanks, Lori. Thanks
I
for
think I'm going to stop recording actually, and that is actually so people can feel freer to talk. So.
Oh.